welcome to another episode of the Kinship Crisis. You're joining me with, my name is Lenora Buckley, and you joining with me with my host, Joanne Lee.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, and today's topic, we are going to talk about the diligent search. The title is The Diligent Search Mandate, Finding Family, but we're going to have to talk a little bit about the diligent search and what that is and how it pertains to the family and everything. So I'm going to get started. The first thing is, what is a diligent search? And a diligent search is a legally mandated process that the Department of Family and Children Services, DFCS, must initiate when a child is removed from their home and placed in foster care. Okay? So the purpose is to identify and locate biological relatives or close family friends who may be willing and able to provide care for the child as a preferable alternative to non-relative foster placement. Okay. And so why this matters, it's a law. You know, it's not optional. It's a law. They have to do it. And they have to do it within the first 30 days. And I'll get into that of the child going into foster care. As soon as possible. And so
Okay.
I'm going to speak on Georgia, but I do know that it is a legal requirement in all 50 states. But some states, with different states, they have different mandates. It's like a federal law, and then but each state is allowed to tweak theirs the way that they want it, basically. So the state is able to define their own definition, scope, the timing of the search. So it can vary significantly from state it is. But per Georgia law and federal policy both recognize that children do better emotionally, psychologically, and culturally when placed with family. Diligent searches are designed to ensure family placement is considered first before the state places the child with a stranger. Okay? And so the requirement that Georgia have is the law defines diligent search as a continuous and thorough effort from the time a child is removed, to look for family. DFCS must begin the search immediately upon removal and continue throughout the case.
Okay.
And so,
Let me ask you a question.
okay.
When they're doing their diligent search, is it a list of things? Because from my understanding, they supposed to conduct getting a family tree together, and when when they do get notified that the child is being taken from the home, and list of grandparents, aunts, cousins, and etc.
That is correct. It says includes contacting known relatives, interviewing the parents, reviewing court records, using tools like electronic databases, social media. They have a lot of software that's supposed to be able to use to find family. And and it's different scenarios. So sometimes you may have a biological mother, father, and they're telling them, hey, I got my mother, my aunt, my sisters, my cousins, I got friends, that's included too, and, call them for placement. But let's say it's a situation where they're not aware of any family, they don't know any family. They still have to look. They're supposed to still look.
By law.
By law, and try to find some kind of family, whether it be, look on the birth certificate, just all these databases where they're supposed to be able to find people. Let's say, an example, like the father is incarcerated and they don't know, the biological mother say, I don't know where he at, which jail, I know he's in jail, that's the last thing I heard. They're supposed to be able, they can get a name or try to find them. They're supposed
Right.
to
They could get his correct name and try to do a search and find him by data, whichever jail he's in, and then find who his parents are to do the step to doing a diligent search.
Right. So even if he's incarcerated, he might have a sister, a cousin, an aunt, his parents, somebody that may be able to take the child as opposed to putting them in foster care. That's not supposed to be
Right.
the first thing. Now, of
That
course,
should
if it's
be
an
the
emergency
last.
situation, like let's say they take the child and they don't have no way, they can't find anybody, then of course they're going to place them in foster care because they haven't found anybody. But to make the stay with foster care shorter and shorter, so he wants to stay in there long, maybe instead of, a year, maybe they might be, he have to stay in there a couple of months or 2 months until they get find the family and do their vetting and everything, make sure that the family member is not on drugs or, some crazy stuff, that they're a good fit, a match, and everything, and then they're not a pedophile, all these things, and then they say, okay, you can go live with your aunt, your grandmother, what have you. So
Correct.
sometimes it's not so they able to do it right away, but that's supposed to be the goal is to
Okay,
find
let
the
me ask you a
family.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, in the scenario of with him, with any child that's been placed into foster care, and they've done that diligent search, and within that 30-day period, and they have not found a parent or any kind of relative to take that child, and that child is placed into foster care, but then afterwards, by maybe I'll say 90 days within that period of time, they end up finding someone to take the child. Okay, what would happen then after that takes place?
Then that starts the process of letting that family know that the child has been taken, and giving them options and letting them know what the legal, you know their rights are as a family member to maybe taking placement of this child. They're going to ask them, do you want to have him placed? Do you want to be considered for placement? That's what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
And this is supposed to happen the entire time, the entire time. So it's not like after 6 months they stop looking like we can. They're supposed to continue to look and try to find people, try to find family, of this child for the life of the case until the rights of the parents are terminated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you one more scenario. Okay, say for instance, if they knew from the start where someone was and they didn't do their diligent search properly to place the child with a family member and decided to go ahead and place that child into foster care.
Well, that is the issue, is what happened to me. Okay. Um, the social worker called me the morning, I'm gonna say 5 o'clock in the morning, and told me that they, had somebody call them, and then they went to where the hotel or wherever, and they found that my grandson was there and that the mother was there, and she had basically relapsed, and so they called me. Actually, the mother called me and gave like they were there, and she called me and asked me, "Can you come and get my grandson?" And I said, "Well, they're kind of rural, and so it was like maybe a 2 hour drive. So I said, I can't. I mean, I can come get him. I can't right now. I can't be there in 20 minutes, but I will come and get him. And so I talked with the caseworker. She like sort of put on the phone, and we talked, and I said, let's make arrangements for me to get my grandson. You know what I'm saying? She gonna go on and take him, and then because I think I'm gonna wait there 2 hours at the hotel.
Right.
Waiting for me to get
Yes.
there.
Understandable. That's
Right.
understandable.
That's understandable. So I figured take her back to the office, whatever. Let me get up and get on and go out. And she said, "Okay, let's talk later, and then I'll make arrangements where you can come, get them where to meet, what have you."
Hmm.
But when she called me back, she said that the mother didn't want him to be placed with me, and we still to this day the mother denies that and says that she never told her that. That's why she called me. Like it's like
Right. Well, that makes
somebody call you and call you to come get somebody, and then come back and say no. She said, she didn't want you to get him. Well, she called me 2 hours ago. What happened in those 2 hours?
right.
So it was a little strange, but
Yeah.
I just did not think anything fishy or anything like that. I just thought, well, it's her child. It's 2 hours away. Maybe she wanted it, closer. She does have relatives that live in Habersham County too. So I thought, well, maybe she'll get her sister or somebody, what have you. They don't really know Kobe like I know him because he's lived with me. But I was like, I just want him to be safe. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And
That's
and
right.
so that is why, But like I've said many times, hindsight is 2020. You don't know what you
Right.
don't know. I didn't know.
Right.
I thought that's the process. That's how
And
it
both could have
goes.
been and both could have been telling a lie. We don't know. We
Right.
wasn't there.
We
Both
wasn't
could have
there.
been lying.
Yeah. She could have the mother could have said that, and the mother,
Could not
and the
have
mother could
said
have
that.
not said
And
that. Yeah.
right. And
You
in the
know.
same sense of the situation, even if it was said or not said, she still was supposed to allow you the opportunity to get your grandson
Right.
because she knew that you were coming to get him.
Right.
Y'all, I've
Well,
already spoken.
right. Well, I didn't know it at the time, but really, the mother didn't have any say because she, we on drugs or high or
That's what I'm.
whatever going
That's
on, so she really didn't have a say on where he goes.
right.
It was up to the caseworker,
That's
and
correct.
so for whatever reason,
She failed.
she didn't want him to come with me.
She
And
failed to do her job.
yeah. Well, when I talk to so many people, and I have, access to talk to some social workers. I work in a healthcare environment. It's just, healthcare always have a social worker involved. And a
Yes.
lot of them was saying, like, why did give them to you? Why did she bring them to you? You 2 hours away.
Right.
Why did she meet you halfway and give them to you? All these options that I didn't know was an option.
Didn't make sense, right?
No, yeah. And so, that's what happened. But anyway, getting back to the diligent search, they are
So no
supposed to be.
search was done on anybody, and no relatives, no one. He was immediately placed into foster care.
Yes, there wasn't a diligent search. Well, let me correct that when I say there was no diligent search done. In actuality, there was a diligent search form filled out, but it was blank. So the place where you say, is there a family member or anybody? It was blank, blank, blank. Now, mind you, she talked to me the night he was taken. And this form, this diligent search form, was filled out multiple times. So it wasn't just like a one-time thing like in the beginning. It was like this month, the next month, couple of months they go to court again, the next month. My name nowhere on there. No family member, not a
No
niece, not a
signature.
it was the caseworker's signature on there, and it was notarized. So basically, she was under, notarized is sort of like under oath in a sense. You know what I'm saying? You're basically saying that this was done. I did this. I researched and did this, but I couldn't find any family. Now, I've
Well,
talked to this caseworker multiple times, so she knew that
you were kids.
my son had sisters. I mean, he had siblings. I had, so I'm the grandmother. I had other children, adult children. So she knew this. She knew it was family. She just didn't do it. She just didn't do it.
So she didn't do her job.
Yeah, she did
Basically.
not. She did not. And so because of that, time went on and on and on and on and on.
So
With
that's
him,
so
with him,
important.
it's like it's almost like once he got in foster care, it was like, oh well, we can't get him out of it. You know what I'm saying? We can't take him out of there. When in actuality they can. It just they didn't want to. Yeah.
Right.
They're supposed to, once they find family, and it's supposed to be, the diligent search is supposed to be done within 30 days of the child being taken. 30 calendar days to basically send these forms out and send them to all the family members and have them fill it out. And on the form, it mentions, do you want to be considered for placement, or do you
Right.
want to be maybe you don't want placement, but you want to be a party if they need an assistance and everything like that, that you're available for the child.
Right.
Okay. Another thing I'm going to add is that a lot of their documentation and their policies and procedures mentions about how important it is when a child is taken into foster care to continue to have visitations for that bonding period. You know what I'm saying? You take a
Mm-hmm.
child and they're scared. They don't know the caseworker. They don't know the foster family. They're not seeing their aunts. They're not seeing their grandmother, mother, father, cousins, aunts. They don't know anybody. And that's whether it's an older child, a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old, or a 3-year-old. They still know their family, and they know they don't know you. They don't know you people. All these people around me, they don't know you. So they say that it's important for the family to be involved and have visitations and see the child to continue to make the child more comfortable, and everything like that
Right.
with the
Mm-hmm.
situation. That didn't happen, you know.
And I
Uh,
just read, I don't mean to cut you off, but I just
oh,
read
that's
that
fine.
she's supposed to have kept a detailed log of all the contact that she made with each and every family member, proof of all mailed out notices, returned letters. She supposed to document all efforts that she made to contact in the diligent search. Every diligent search is supposed to be handled in every case this way.
Right, right. And she did 2 years later.
Oh,
She after some complaints and some this and some that and everything like that, they decided to do the diligent search. But my grandson had been in care almost 2 years, and then they decided, so they did it in, this is 2023. He was taken. They did it in 2025. 2 years later, they
so
sort of tried to backtrack and do what they sort of should have did within the first 30 days.
right. So that left off your time of your bonding within that diligent search when you had the time where you could be visitations and all of this other stuff with them trying to find placement. You still had the opportunity that you could have still been bonding with your grandchild.
Yes, but that they tried to and then continue to try to keep that from happening. In my opinion, I mean, I'm sure they'll say something different, but I mean, what do you think happens when you have a 3-year-old and you don't see him for a year and a half, 2 years? What do you think happens? They can't get in the car and go. They can't call you. They can't text you. You know.
And they also said that that it should have been in person visits, phone
Yeah.
calls, all of that thing should have been taking place with the child.
Yeah. Not a video chat. Not a nothing. As I mentioned before in my previous, my first part, the first episode, I don't have a criminal background. I work every day. I don't do drugs or anything like that. So it's not like, I don't know, it's not like the child is, and I'm talking about supervised visits. So I'm not talking about like me picking him up and taking the boy home for the weekend. I'm talking about just seeing him for an hour supervised. That was a
Right,
threat. Am I a threat to him? That he's not safe? He lived with me for years.
right, right.
So
And you
I
have
just,
other kids as well that you interact with on a regular basis that love
right,
you unconditionally. So, I
right,
mean, if there even was to sit down and have a conversation with them, they would know you are a great grandmother. So,
right,
I mean,
right,
you've raised beautiful, successful children. I mean, come on now. All they have to do,
right,
if they would have done the diligent search properly, they would have known that.
right, right. If they had vetted me, then they would have known, but they didn't. You know what I'm saying? They had dug into my background and said, well, okay, this woman wants, this grandchild. Let's see where she works, what she does, where she lives. I own my home. I have cars. I have,
Right,
I mean, I don't know. And so they just decided that they didn't want that for me. And I talked to
right,
so many grandmothers and aunts and cousins. I got my cousin. I got my cousin's kids. I got my nieces and my nephews and I mean, I'm like sitting back saying, well, what was wrong with me? I
right.
don't know. And to this day, I still don't know.
It shouldn't be nothing that prevents you from getting him. It just doesn't make sense.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's really unlawful and it's biased. I mean, it's all the above that should not be taking place in your case. I don't
Yeah.
agree with none of this stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
And that's why a diligent
Well,
search is so important. It's
well,
very important.
it is. It is. And I'm biased because it's my grandson, but he's adorable. He is
He is.
gorgeous.
And he's my nephew. So I
Yeah.
love him
So,
conditionally.
maybe that played a part in it. I don't know. But they sure ain't trying to give him back, baby. They fighting like tooth and nail to keep him. You
That's
know,
right.
yeah,
And we are too.
and we are too. We love him too.
We are exposing their wrongdoing.
Right, right. So I want to get back to the diligent search and who is a relative. Who is a relative to this child? Who's considered a relative? And the list that I have is that a relative of the child is a person related to the child by blood, marriage, or adoption, including the spouse of any of those persons, even if the marriage was terminated by death. So relatives include maternal and paternal grandparents, great
Mm-hmm.
grandparents, uncles and aunts, nieces and nephews, siblings, including siblings that are related through a punitive father, first cousins, and first cousins once removed, a parent's cousin. So I'm gonna go back to the one where it says siblings and including siblings are related through a punitive father. That means that maybe you have a guy that has other children.
Mm-hmm.
So you have a guy and he has children, and those children, especially today, you might have a 20-year-old. It's a child in
Mm-hmm.
foster care, and he's 7 or 8, and the sibling, sister or brother, is maybe 18, over 18, really, 18, 19, 20. They are considered a relative, and they are, depending on their situation, eligible for placement with them.
Right.
You know, and then so that is who a relative is, who is considered a relative. They even have what they call fictive kin. And fictive kin means a person who is not related to the child by blood or marriage, but they have a close personal relationship. They have had a
Right.
substantial and positive relationship with the child. So you know how, like me, and unless I have a best friend, and she's
Mm-hmm.
really, I mean, she's been around this child all his life. You know what I'm saying?
Since birth.
Since birth. And
Mm-hmm.
almost like an aunt or uncle role, even though it's not blood
Mm-hmm.
related. Even that
Right.
child, that family member,
Person.
friend, can be considered
Mm-hmm.
for placement.
Right.
So,
Well, I have
um,
a question about the adoption part.
mhm.
Would How did that play a role with being considered as would not being placed in foster care, but the adopted part being able to be a part of the diligent search and being placed in the child being placed in the home?
So do you mean how does that affect the adoption? Them putting them up
No,
for
I'm
adoption?
asking. You said that the adoptive relative could be considered as
Okay, okay, okay. I see what you mean. So this is just, let's just say I have a little a girl that I
mm-hmm.
adopted when she was 7, and now she's 27. She is
Okay.
still considered, because I adopted her. She is still eligible to be the child to be placed with her, because technically she's a part of the family because she was
Right. I knew
adopted.
that. I just want you to explain it.
Okay, yeah, yeah. That's a good question. That's a real good question. Yeah, they still, once
Look,
you're the
but
child,
you know
that's like your
that.
biological child. Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. So that is one part of the who is a relative.
Because
And
we have a
so
lot of adopted people in our family right now. Like, I'm not going to name them, but we do have adopted relatives in our family right now, and we consider them as family members. And we don't look at them as being adopted because they carry our last name, so they
right,
will carry our legacy. You know what I'm
right,
saying? So we don't
exactly.
look at them like that.
Hmm. And so, with the diligent search, they have to, like you mentioned earlier, document their efforts. They have a lot of statewide software that they're supposed to document, where to show that they have tried to get family they found and place them in there, and then that they've notified the relatives, and like I said, inform them of the child's situation and their right to be considered for placement. And then DFCS is another important key. DFCS is required to prioritize placement with relatives or
Right.
fictive kin before foster homes, unless it's not in the child's best interest. Case in point, like I
Correct.
mentioned about they have somebody that's
Mm-hmm.
on drugs or some
Right.
issues. They're not going to place them with them, of course.
Mm-mm.
If a suitable relative is found but not selected for placement, defects must explain why. They just can't say no, not you. They have to explain and have
Right.
documentation that we didn't choose this person because
Because
she has this picture. They're a pedophile, or they have an extensive
background.
criminal background where they have hurt children, or they've done
Mm-hmm.
something.
Right.
But they have to have it documented. Why? You just can't just because you don't want to. You have to document why. And that's my problem is they never did that to me. They never told me why, or why not. They never even
Right.
checked me out.
Right. They
Yeah,
never gave you the opportunity to even voice your opinion, to even be on front line with Kobe. I
right.
mean, you
And I
never
mean
got
they
to put up your fight to get him.
yeah, and they knew from the beginning I wanted them. They knew. Just the case was
Right.
real because I told her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course she knew. That's why she know these foster people want them, you know?
Mhm. Mhm. One of the things I will add that I want to mention for people, like I said again, hindsight is 2020. Is a lot of things that me and the caseworker discussed was by phone. I didn't record her, and she, what I'm saying. So that's where I said, hey, I want my grandson. Why can't I get him? And all these things when I should have followed up. After that conversation by phone, I should have sent her an email per our conversation. This is what we talked about to sort of get start a paper trail. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
That, I mean, I learned pretty early on to, when it started getting weird, like they just would not seem like they not giving me my grandchild. I did start, everything by email, everything in writing, everything like that. But some of those initial first
Conversation.
conversations,
Mm-hmm.
it was not by email, it was by phone.
I think it's because you never experienced this right here before. When you don't go through something, you really don't know. So you can't really beat yourself up about things that you don't know. Experience is your best teacher. You know what I'm saying? So
Right.
you have to go through things to learn things. You know what I'm saying? So
Right. Yeah.
that being said, you know now. So you know how to go forward with trying to get things done.
Right.
So I mean, lesson learned. Now it's you battling now. So you in the game now, and you can't do nothing but try to win this battle, bring Kobe home. Operation Bring Kobe Home, because there's no way possible that she'll be able to do these same things to you with this situation, because
Right.
your eyes are open now to the situation and what's going on.
Yeah, I'm knowledgeable now, but
Right.
uh, you know, um, so I want to mention about when defects fails to follow diligent search and what the notes I took and what I found in my research, and
Okay.
what it says is failure to conduct a proper diligent search may violate federal law under the Fostering Connection to Success and Increasing Adoption Act in 2008. It state law potentially undermining reunification efforts or wrongfully terminating parental rights. So basically what they're saying is if you're trying to terminate the biological parents' rights and you have not did a diligent search into and as you miss some steps, you may not even have grounds to terminate their parental rights because you didn't do everything,
Right.
you know.
And they shouldn't even have grounds to even continue on with the case without even taking him out of foster care and placing him with you until the case is still going on.
Right.
Because once he's legitimized, he should be taken and placed with you.
Right. And it says defects can be challenged in court for not making reasonable efforts to place with family or kin.
That's what I just said.
Yeah, yep, yep. So, a diligent search is not optional. It's a legal and ethical requirement. Relatives must be located, contacted, and considered for placement early and continuously. If defects claims no relative could be found, ask to see the documentation. And last point, if relatives were overlooked or ignored, they may have legal grounds to contest placement or adoption.
That's right,
So,
because it's a mandatory thing. It's mandatory that they do the diligent search.
right.
And they should be overturned. Everything that they have done should be overturned.
Yeah. Yep. So they didn't do what they're supposed to do, and they're trying to fix it, but at a cost. Is it at a cost of me? I've missed 2 years
Right.
of his life.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah, and that's wrong too. And all that should
birthdays,
be brought up.
Christmas,
Mm-hmm.
birthdays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, holidays, summer break, all of those. We went on
Right.
we went on a family cruise. He wasn't included because he's not with us. All of that because somebody made an error and and decided that I couldn't have my grandchild with me.
No, she
You
took
know,
it into her own hands to make that decision. She didn't follow protocol and do what was right and do the diligent search and look for other family members and make sure he was placed with a family member before she reached out to foster care.
yep, exactly. So now, again, they're trying to fix what was not done partially. The foster parents, again, and we'll talk more about that on other episodes, but are wanting to adopt. They made that clear. And so I'm battling defects and I'm battling them too because they feel like he been with us. We love him. He should stay with
Yeah.
us. You know, we love him
Yeah,
too.
but it's gonna be a real big fight on that end right there because if they even consider and they didn't even do the proper procedures to make sure he was properly placed in the first place, then that's really gonna bring me to another state of mind. So we're not even gonna go into that episode right now, but
Yeah,
it's not going down. So
yeah,
they
yeah.
might as well get ready.
They got to fight. They got to fight on their
That's right.
hands, definitely. So,
That's right.
well,
And
I'm going
defects,
to, yeah, yeah, they do. So, thank you all and for everyone who's listening or going to listen for joining us for the Kinship Crisis. And I'll leave contact information if you have any questions or may have a situation that you want to talk about, maybe with your family member or kin, and be a guest on our show. And so, until next time, thank you all for joining us and have a great evening.
yes, everyone come back and see us again now. Or here, listen to us.
All right. Bye, everyone.